Hello everyone and welcome to Quality Old Games. Today we are making another tier list, this time from Britain's unit roster in original Rome Total War. And the unit roster is based mainly on campaign setting, so in addition to the unit's fighting capabilities, also the requirements, training time, costs are taken into consideration, at least to some degree, but the fighting capabilities are still the strongest kind of factor in this tier list. But without further ado, let's begin. First we have bodyguard, and actually interestingly, Britons have only one bodyguard unit, so they don't get late bodyguards, and since they do have a chariot bodyguard, I think that's rather good. Overall, I think chariots are rather good in the game, if player controlled, if AI controlled, then not so good. They are not quite as good in my opinion as Egyptian chariot general, because they do have, those Egyptians have bows. So I think I'm kind of wondering between weak Spartan tier and wannabe Spartan strong positioning here. Let's put them here for now. I mean, with player control and that fear factor they induce, that's great. At the same time, the availability can be limited because you cannot kind of control how many family members you are going to get, and if the family member dies in battle, then the unit is lost. Then again, it replenishes automatically, so that's really nice, but still, especially in the later game, I think that the unit being tied to family members somewhat limits the applicability of this unit. You cannot make doom stacks out of these, or even have several of these if you control a large area in one army, although that's quite rare, so perhaps strong wannabe Spartan then. Then we have another chariot unit, heavy chariot, actually the same icon. The requirements for this unit is rather special, so you need to have armorer from tier 3 settlement. The unit takes 2 turns to train, so yeah, those are kind of a rather, well, that 2 turns to train is a big minus for it. In my opinion, or in my books, the recruitment from armorer is a big plus. On the other hand, chariots are really good against enemy cavalry units, so that's great, but against enemy infantry, perhaps the same applies to some degree to that bodyguard. You need to be careful, because if you happen to charge spear unit, then the chariot unit will be annihilated in pretty much no time. But if you can utilize the chariots in tandem with strong infantry, for example, or other frightening effects, then they can perform rather well. But because of the rather intensive micro this unit requires and 2 turns to train, I will give it only wannabe Spartan tier. Then we have light chariots, and you need only blacksmith for this unit, and it only takes 1 turn to recruit, and practically tier 2 settlement, so that's really nice. And missile cavalry is always missile cavalry, be it on chariots or on horseback, so I think it will go to Spartan tier nonetheless. The downside with this unit is that enemy kind of foot archers have rather good chances against it, because it has a driver and shooter, so it does not have that much firepower than normal horse archer cavalry units, but still it can perform quite well in melee against light cavalry as well, so I think Spartan tier is rather well grounded. Then we have war dogs, pretty much and actually the only unit Britons can recruit from stables, and I'm not sure that one should build stables only to get war dogs. Unless, of course, you want to kind of combine the frightening effect from many units, chariots, war dogs, head hurlers, and so on. But in my experience, I mean, facing war dogs is really annoying, but they are a bit of a niche unit. So I'm not sure. 2 turns to train, that's a bit much in my books. Then again, you replenish those war dogs quite nicely, but still, as it's the only unit you can get from stables, I think I will give it strong bad tier. And mainly because it's the only unit. And thus, investing on stables is not perhaps worth it. If you capture a settlement with stables, I think they will go to decent or somewhat decent, but I will let them be in bad tier for now, because in my opinion you should go for the blacksmiths and most likely some temples and perhaps infantry building, and that's pretty much it. So you don't kind of need stables. Then let's move to infantry. Chosen Swordsmen, a rather solid unit with Warcry, packs quite a punch, and as with heavy armor it can form relatively solid infantry line to hold the enemy in place so that you can, for example, use the chariots to hit the rear or hit the enemy archers or whatever. So I think they are clearly wannabe Spartan tier. A bit on the more expensive side, but 1 turn to train is really nice. So definitely at least wannabe Spartan tier. I think a rather strong wannabe Spartan tier, but on the other hand all of these are rather strong wannabe Spartans, so that's why the reason for position about here. Okay, then we have druids, and they're kind of, I mean, interesting units. Their main use is to buff the morale of your own troops, but based on my testing they are not particularly good at that, and that as the unit size of druids is really small, they kind of are not that good in battle, even though they are rather heavily armored. Furthermore, they take 2 turns to train, so yeah, I don't quite like druids in this game. In my opinion, they are rather worthless unit. The thing going for them is that the requirements is Temple of, or rather Sacred Circle of Britannia, tier 3 temple building. So, and actually, in my opinion, perhaps the best kind of public order temple building the Britons do have. So basically, in some cases, you get the unit as kind of a bonus for building the temples you need. But overall, the performance of the unit in the battle and 2 turns to train is kind of abysmal, in my opinion, and thus it will go to Eastern Infantry. Even though it comes kind of a free, it does not provide the value, in my experience, that you would want to get from a unit. So kind of a wasted space in your army, in my experience. Then we have peasants, and as Britons is a barbarian faction, they will struggle with public order or maintaining public order with huge and large cities when they manage to capture them, so they will need to have large garrisons, and peasants are ideal for that. And of course, if as Britons tend to have some rather not so well populated areas, they might need to move population from one settlement to another, and perhaps most likely to Londinium, so to get to access to tier 3 units. So I think peasants can be utilized there as well. They are not in Spartan tier for their fighting capabilities, but because you need something to boost the public order. The temples and bardic circles are not going to be enough in the later game, especially in harder difficulties. Then we have swordsmen. I mean, decent unit, tier 2 unit. I think with proper management they can deal with Hastati. Not quite against Principes, but kind of solid line infantry in my experience. So yeah, of course, when you get access to chosen swordsmen, then the basic swordsmen practically get phased out, because chosen swordsmen are so much better. But I mean, decent enough unit in the earlier game. Then we have warband. Practically, as I was about to say, as Britons don't have access to other spear units, they might be useful. but Britons do have access to chariots, which are counter to cavalry. So I was kind of putting this to bad tier, but now I'm wondering, should they actually go to Eastern Infantry tier? Because quite often you cannot afford to draw so much of the population of the settlement to train multiple of these guys, and in battle they beat Iberian infantry, I will give them that, but that's pretty much the peak of their performance, and that's pretty much an insult. So I'm kind of wondering, weak bad tier, strong Eastern Infantry tier, I think I will give them strong Eastern Infantry. So you should avoid making these units whenever possible, make swordsmen instead. But yeah, there might be some situations where you need to train these in small settlements where you don't have any other options, then by all means train them. But otherwise, as I'm saying that, I need to give them bad tier. Yeah, a weak bad tier for them. Because, well, there are situations where you need to recruit them. On the other hand, there are no situations where you need to recruit druids, in my opinion. Then we have Ward Warriors, a temple unit, Temple of Andrasta tier 1. That's rather nice requirements, because Andrasta tier temples will give you access to head hurlers, as well as to more experience for troops. So the temple itself is good, and then you can get Ward Warriors from it. However, about fighting capabilities, in my experience, swordsmen actually beat Ward Warriors. So, of course, swordsmen are tier 2 unit, Ward Warriors are tier 1, but I don't think the difference is actually that big. You can get tier 2 settlements, especially Londinium is already at least tier 2, so you have access to better units than Ward Warriors, and the training time is 2 turns. So that kind of hurts the unit really bad, in my opinion. Of course, in smaller settlements, I think these actually are better than Warband, so maybe you can train these, but in my opinion, rather a bad unit overall. Because swordsmen are faster to get, you get them faster. Yeah, faster to get, you get them faster is kind of logical, but they are better in battle. So yeah, I think Ward Warriors are relatively bad, but in some situations you might want to get them. Then let's move to missile units. First we have rather kind of a joke unit. We have, or kind of Easter egg unit, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, these guys are hurling heads. It's the head hurler name says it all. And what's interesting is that those missiles are actually armor piercing. So basically, this unit shines against highest tier opponents, say cataphracts, urban cohorts, armored hoplites, etc., etc. The range is relatively small or short, but still, the unit is really nice. You get it from tier 2 Temple of Andrasta. Building chain, so these come with +1 experience already, and they take only 1 turn to train. And as of such, I think they are really fine addition to Britain's unit roster. I will give them a Spartan tier, mainly because of the armor piercing attack, which is rather unique for missile units in Rome Total War. Kind of reminds me of crossbow units in Barbarian Invasion, or in Medieval 2 Total War, perhaps with a somewhat shorter range, but still a really, really nice unit to complement Britain's roster. Then we have Slingers, actually the only unit you can get from the practice range or archery range buildings. And once again, in my opinion, the building itself is rather obsolete, because this is the only unit you can get, and it's not that good in battle, because you need to kind of be aware of it all times. You cannot put it behind your own troops, because then it will fire it their back, and then if they are on the flanks, you need to pay constant attention that the enemy cavalry cannot reach them, or enemy units cannot reach them. So, kind of micro-intensive units. I like archers much more because you can put them behind your own infantry line, and you can do so for head hurlers as well. So, what I like about this is that they have longer range than head hurlers. They have a decent amount of missiles, so that's really nice. But in my opinion, somewhat obsolete. So I would say that you need to build the blacksmith building chain, infantry or barracks building chain, and then Temple of Andrasta building chain. And that's pretty much what you need in the game. If you want to have slingers, I mean, it's not a bad unit, and then you can go for the practice range, or whatever the name of the building is, then that's fine. But I think you should avoid staples and, well, avoid druids overall. But yeah, that's my view of Britain's unit roster. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you want to support the channel, consider becoming a channel member. You get access to some emojis, icon next to the username, and you get more to say what units to test and what type of campaigns to play. And very special thanks to existing channel members Napoleon Complex, Kosakusar, Mac Anthony. Your support is greatly treasured. Have a great rest of the day. Quality Old Games out.